Greetings, YouTubians, and welcome back to Wayne Sharp World, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Tucson TS262. This is a collaboration with Tepe, and I've got to say, it is my favorite Tucson to date. I'm going to tell you all why here in just a second, and I'm also going to let you know that I have some very nice pieces coming in for review. Hopefully going to be able to get them in this week. That's depending on the mail, so keep your fingers crossed, as I will have mine crossed as well. And let's get going. First of all, I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. If you like what you see, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, follow along, and I will continue to keep bringing you guys some good content and some really good stuff on the horizon. Now, let's take a look at some overall specs on this knife. We have an overall length of 7.95 inches with a blade length coming in at 3.22 inches and a cutting edge, excuse me, at 2.95 inches. We have a blade thickness at 0.155 with a blade width of 1.14, that being from the tip right here up to the top of the blade, or we'll just call it the top of the blade right here. 1.14 inches right here, excuse me. We have a blade grind of a flat grind with M390 steel, a handle length of 4.68 inches with a handle width of 1 inch, being measured right around here in the middle, where it's going to sit in the middle of your palm. We have a handle thickness of 0.51 inches, titanium backspacer, titanium pocket clip. This guy is running on KVT ceramic bearings. As I mentioned before, this is a collaboration with Tepe. You always know that because you have his awesome maker's mark right there, which is always a pleasure to look at. And a weight of 3.6 ounces on this guy. For the size of this knife, it is has a very nice, comfortable carrying weight, and you don't really notice it in the pocket that much at all. And the price, good lord, the price on this guy, I got this on eBay. You know, it's the Tucson, so you got to play the eBay game. But I got it for $125.50. $125.50. I don't know what to say about that other than it's fantastic. This knife, made by a lot of other manufacturers, would be right up there in the $175 to $200 range. So to get it for $125.50 is absolutely fantastic. Nothing short of that. Now let's take a look at some size comparisons here. See exactly what we got. Got something in my throat today. Let's start off with the Deadpool Spyderco Paramilitary 2 Tonto style, as well as the Spyderco Manix 2. Now, there is a reason I have the Manix 2 in here, and that is due to ergonomics. As you can see, there's a swell in the handle of the TS262 right here, and while there's not the exact same type swell in the handle there, to me, those two feel similar in hand. You also are going to be placing your index finger at about the same spot, and if you want to choke up, you can do that as well right there, which we will get more into when I get to the Ergos. But some references there for you, and let's get a couple more here. We have your ZT 0850, little limited edition run here. As you can see, that's longer, as well as a Hinderer. We got a Hinderer XM18 on the channel today because, again, this is another one where I think the Ergos are rather similar. Big fan of the Ergos on this knife. And one more round. I got to throw my other Tucsons in there. We have our Tucson. To be honest, I don't remember the name of this. I'm sorry. It's a Jelly Jerry design. It's very nice. I kind of want to say TS 123, but I don't know for sure. And then my other Tucson front flipper, I'm a very big fan of. I believe this is the TS 129. And there you go. Very similar, the 129 to 262, if that is indeed the 129. The numbers are playing games in my head sometimes. But as you can see, you have a sheep's foot right here, and sheep's foot, Warncliffe. I was actually educated by a couple viewers on one of my last episodes and explained to me the difference between a sheep's foot and a Warncliffe. The difference is at the tip. A sheep's foot will have a rounded tip that is not good for piercing, and a Wharncliffe will have a pointy tip that is good for piercing. So you can kind of take that how you want. I'm going to consider this a sheep's foot blade, and I guess maybe that is a Wharncliffe. Maybe it's not a sheep's foot. But regardless, there you go. There's some size comparisons. Now, let's get into this knife, because I don't have many bad things to say about this one, which is refreshing. Had a couple rough reviews lately. This one is not going to be that by any means whatsoever, because this blade here, let's start right there as we always do. This blade means business. It has a very nice length. It is a super aggressive and super powerful slicer and cutter. I have a behind the edge reading on this guy of 13 thousandths. It absolutely disintegrates paper. An excellent slicer. The difference, as I said, the difference between the sheep's foot and the Wharncliffe, I'm going to definitely call this a sheep's foot. I kind of feel like you could do a little piercing with that, because it's not super rounded, but I think it's definitely rounded enough to consider it a sheep's foot. But more than anything too, I just really like what Tucson has been doing lately. They've been collaborating with excellent designers, coming out with very solid pieces and unique looking pieces. I haven't seen a knife that looks like this. I mean, this is a very unique piece. Some very nice and surprisingly effective jimping. So when I got this knife, obviously one of the biggest reasons I got it was because it was a front flipper, and I pulled it out of the box and I saw this jimping and I thought, good God, they just screwed up a great thing. And I was very wrong. As I started using this, and I'll use it more in the video, this jimping is very surprisingly effective. It does not look like it would be very grippy, but it is. It just is. I don't know how they did that, but it works. And you also have a very nice cutout on the blade that comes in very handy for multiple deployment methods, and it's chamfered and rounded nice to where it doesn't take off parts of your nail or rub too hard on your finger. Very comfortable cutout. And God, I got to talk about that grind one more time, because it is just an absolute razor. You could shave with this knife. I think you really could. It's definitely the best edge on a Tucson I've ever experienced. Significantly. Very well done there. And going into the handles and ergos, the handle is the only place where I have a little bit of an issue with this knife. I guess I wouldn't call it an issue, just it's a little bit of an unpleasantry, and that being the carbon fiber, which is very nice carbon fiber. It is thick and extremely sturdy, so I am a big fan of that. But there's a couple, I don't want to call them blemishes, because there's no, this is completely flat on the scale. You don't have any little holes or sometimes grind gaps or something in the carbon fiber from when they were sanding it. But what you have is just a couple parts right here, and pretty much just on the front, on the show side, it's right here. You see kind of the warped kind of bleh part of it. And then you also have it on the back, where it's also noticeable. Not quite as bad, I guess, but a little right there. And I try not to let that affect me too much. As you can see, maybe it's a little right there. The carbon fiber does a real good job of hiding that little blemish or imperfection by light reflecting off it, and carbon fiber doing its thing, looking awesome like it always does. But especially right there, I noticed that. And on the show side and everything, it's like, darn, that's the only thing. It really is the only thing on this knife that I don't find to be it's just, like I said, it's not very favorable. I'd much rather the carbon fiber on this one here is flawless. It has a nice, I guess, I don't know if I was to say pattern, because it's not really the same, but you don't see any kind of warped blemishes on this like you do on this one. And the same for my other Tucson. This is probably my favorite carbon fiber of all of them. Fantastic job on this. But again, I'm not necessarily subtracting points from this knife, because everything else is so good. But that is definitely the one little part of the knife that I wish would look just a tad better. But going into the actual ergos of this knife, the ergos are excellent. They are the best ergos of any Tucson I've had to date. It just fits my hand really good with the swell as the handle gets bigger down towards the bottom. It just sits in my palm perfectly. As you guys can see, this rounded edge here, just right in there, and fits and feels like a glove. The jimping up here, you feel it just enough to use it. And I am usually a huge fan of choking up on a knife, but this knife, it feels good when I choke up. It feels completely fine. It feels a lot like a hinderer choking up on this knife. Or a Mannix too. I would say a little more on the hinderer side when choked up, but when just in hand like this, I feel a little bit more the Mannix. But regardless, it feels great in either position. And this is one of the few knives I prefer it like this. I prefer it without choking up. But again, when I do choke up, it feels just as good. So that's very nice. Huge fan of that. And again, I think it's all done by the increase in the width of the handle as it goes down. I think even smaller hands are going to like this a lot. It may feel a little bigger in smaller hands, but I think it's still going to fit in there really good. As I mentioned before, the thickness of this carbon fiber is something that you don't see on a lot of knives. It's just a little thicker, but when you're talking about something like handle scales, that little bit of extra thickness makes a huge difference. This knife feels extremely durable for carbon fiber with the titanium backspacer. Adds a lot more rigidity to it, and it's just, I think it's good to use pretty darn hard. And they also did a very good job of making the liner lock accessible. As you can see, it's shaved back just a little more on this side, and they got it flattened right there where you have a very solid lockup. And here comes the butter. It's by far going into the action, the best action I have ever come across on a Tucson. All my Tucson action, all the action on my Tucson knives are great. I've never complained about the action on any of them, but this one was buttery smoother out of the box. Sometimes bigger knives are hard to do the reach around flip, but it's not that bad. I did this behind the camera where I'm kind of awkward, my arm's wrapped around. It still comes out just fine, and it is a pleasure to fidget with. Very extremely fidgety knife. You got your middle finger flick done just as easily. You have your index flick done just as nice, and you can also do the thumb flick. For me, it feels a little awkward, but it still works pretty darn well. But again, back to the jimping, making the front flipping on this knife very, very effective. And it makes a great sound. You guys hear that hollow click? That hollowish little... It's great. Absolutely great. Another knife I would really compare this to is a knife that I have talked up a lot over this year. It came out this year, that being the Kaiser Genie. I tell you, the only thing the difference between the Genie and this TS262 is the width. If you like slimmer knives, you may like this more, but you really have to experience both of these because they're both super light. The action on both of them is super buttery smooth, and they remind me of each other a lot in action and fidgety. It feels in hand when you're actually fidgeting and deploying, they feel very similar, and the bearings on both of them, I'm going to set this guy back aside because he's already had his moment in the sun, but the bearings on this guy are just ridiculously smooth. And it feels, when you're flipping it out, it just feels like there is a lot of extra stability in there around the bearings. There's zero blade play with that thick stock and thick scales. God, it's just so well done. And for $125.50, this may very well be the best value knife I've come across this year. Now, granted, being on eBay, the values may vary. I got it for $125 after this video, and everyone wants it. Or if you get 2 or 3 people wanting it, maybe one goes for $135, $140. I would argue it even $140. It's still a really, really, really good deal. I think I just got lucky at the $125 range. Maybe not. Maybe that's what they all go for. But man, I've got to say, I have no issues. The pocket clip is kind of the traditional milled titanium pocket clip from Tucson. No problem with that at all whatsoever. Like it a lot. Fits in the pocket just fine. Carries very well. Of course, there's no pocket pecker or anything like that. just another very well done. Listen to that. Listen to that. I'm going to shut up for a second. And so good. Tucson, keep it up. My overall thoughts on this knife are obviously very positive. If it wasn't for the little blemish there on the carbon fiber, this would be an absolute home run. And this is still a very solid triple. Very, very solid triple. Absolutely like this knife a lot. Do love it. Gonna stay in the collection. Gonna add it to my front flipper repertoire. Try saying that. Try saying front flipper repertoire a few times, and you can't. It's hard. I can barely say it once. But regardless, overall thoughts. Excellent knife. Love the action. Best one to date. Excellent design by Tepe, excellent execution by Tucson. I hope they continue to keep this coming. Let me know, guys, what other Tucson do I need to check out and experience? I've got 4 now, and I have yet to find one that I don't like. So I don't know if that's going to be happening, but I'm going to be real happy with this one for a while. That's what I got for this one. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you're looking forward to the content I got coming for you. Should have a nice new one for you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, and until the next one, I'm out.